Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about an artist that I've covered in the past before. But in the past, I covered his entire catalog, plus the catalog of his brother. And instead of doing that, I'm going to be more focused, hyper-focused, I guess. And I'm going to cover just a certain period of his career. And the artist I'm talking about is singer-songwriter Marshall Crenshaw, still an amazing artist. He's one of America's finest singer-songwriters to this day. Still, he understands music from the inside out. He's one of those who studies music, who still is a big fan of music, especially the rock and roll era of like the 50s and the 60s. And that's what his main influences are. Now, I can call this Marshall Crenshaw in the 80s because all these albums were released in the 80s, but that's kind of lumping him in with people are going to think it's new wavy or whatever. And if I say early years, people will think maybe the first album. But no, let's just call this Marshall Crenshaw, the Warner Brothers years, which basically is 82 to 89. So all of those titles, I guess, would work. But we're going to start off with something that wasn't on Warner Brothers. I just want to point this out because it is a great archival piece. It is called The 9-Volt Years. And this features demos and such from 79 to 80 ? What an amazing songwriter he was right out the gate. One of the songs that's on here became a B-side of one of his singles called You're My Favorite Waste of Time, which is incredible. And in fact, it's a B-side, a demo, and it's become one of his most iconic tracks. It's really an amazing piece of work, but this is exciting. Some of these songs were later re-recorded for his albums because these are demos, but there are some songs here that are exclusive to this, and it is truly a treasure trove of great melodic guitar pop. Like I said, Marshall Crenshaw was around in the 80s, but his roots and his sound is certainly rooted in everything from Buddy Holly to the Beatles to, all the rock and roll greats like Little Richard, Chuck Berry. Plus, it goes much deeper than that as well. It's just not on the surface. He is a musicologist and he loves this music, and it shows in his own music. Now, his first album was 1982, and it was just called Marshall Crenshaw. Now, this has come out a couple times on CD. This is the Rhino remaster with bonus tracks. It's an expanded edition, and this has some great non-album tracks there, some rarities, a really wonderful release, but this is no longer available. In fact, it has been replaced by a brand new remaster on Yep Roc Records, and they changed the cover. So you can see there are two different covers, so you'll know the difference when you go into a CD shop or a record shop to buy the original or the remaster. This is on the Yep Roc, and this too has bonus tracks, but they're different bonus tracks. And this is the album that has Someday, Some Way. That's the song that I first heard by Marshall Crenshaw, but I didn't hear it by Marshall Crenshaw. I heard it by Robert Gordon because I was a big Robert Gordon fan. And so when I heard that this Marshall Crenshaw guy was coming out with an album, now Marshall Crenshaw had written a couple songs for Robert Gordon. Actually, I don't know if he wrote them for Robert Gordon, but Robert Gordon covered them. And then, so when the first Marshall Crenshaw album came out, me, my brother, our friend Rick Enfelt, we all just fell in love with this album. And it's such an amazing piece of work. This has, like I said, Someday, Some Way, Cynical Girl, There She Goes Again, Rocking Around in NYC. It's got a song called Girls. In fact, it has, Mary Ann's another great song. It was produced by Richard Goddard. He brought out that instant pop sound out of Marshall Crenshaw. Just a trio of Marshall Crenshaw, Robert Crenshaw on drums, and Chris Donato on bass. But they just sounded the chemistry there, and they were just intertwined, and it just sounded wonderful. Now, his next album featured a picture of Marshall Crenshaw when he was 12 years old out in front of his high school. No, not really. That is a picture taken for his album cover, and I don't think that he was very happy with that. But this album, Field Day, produced by Steve Lillywhite. Now, if you're familiar with Steve Lillywhite, he's produced everyone from just tons of bands, XTC, Big Country. But Steve Lillywhite's production is big and full and boisterous, big loud drums, and all the stuff going on. So what are you going to do with the trio of Marshall Crenshaw, Robert Crenshaw, and Chris Donato? You're just going to make it sound more cavernous and more big and more full. And sometimes I think that the band gets lost in that cavernous sound, but it's still a wonderful sound because it's Steve Lillywhite production, but it's too busy for a trio. But the band is happy with it. So, I've sort of come to terms with the fact that it's still a great album. I mean, it really is. Like I said, the production isn't as tight as what Richard Gotterer got with the debut album, but still, the songs, oh, I mean, when I hear him, I mean, it's just like Felix the Cat. My heart will go pitter-pat. It's just amazing. And this is the original issue that came out on Warner Brothers. But this, too, has had a remaster from Yep Roc and was just reissued with an album cover that Marshall is happy with, taken from the same photo session. That is Field Day. This is the brand new version of that album, and it's remastered. It still has, like I said, that cavernous, tub-thumping, boom-boom sound to it, that doesn't seem to fit a trio, but still, it's wonderful to hear those three guys playing together and these amazing songs, Our Town, Whenever You're on My Mind, things like that. It's wonderful. And this, of course, has bonus tracks. The other Warner Brothers CD does not have bonus tracks, so you're definitely going to need this if you only have that first Warner Brothers on CD. And if you haven't heard Marshall Crenshaw, those first two are the best gateway albums, guaranteed. And if you love this great melodic Beatles, Buddy Holly influenced pop, you are going to love this. Speaking of Buddy Holly, he did play Buddy Holly in the movie La Bamba. Anyway, 1985, he put out the album Downtown. Now, this was produced by T-Bone Burnett. And, you'd think right then that T-Bone Burnett, Marshall Crenshaw getting together, but it's not a great album. It sounds a little too rootsy, too 80s countrified in some ways. There's still some really good songs. In fact, one of my favorite Marshall Crenshaw songs ever is a song called Blues is King. His vocal on that is just tremendous, and this melodic hook, and that's on this album. So that is a complete total standout. The rest of the album is really good too. It's just not up to par with the first two albums, but still worth your while, especially for Blues is King. Oh, Lord. Now, in 1987, he got together with Don Dixon, who was another great pop producer, and he put out the album Mary Jean and Nine Others. Yes, this is a very 80s-looking album cover. Now, they're depicting it back to a trio. Robert Crenshaw is there. Chris Donato is no longer with the band, but Graham Maby is playing drums, and Graham used to play for Joe Jackson. So, in fact, he's a member of the Joe Jackson Band. Plus, he's been playing with Joe Jackson later and a lot of other great artists. But this is, I think, a big improvement over Downtown. It's more of a pop album again, closer to the first two albums. Great songs on this. There's a list of them there. But you also get some other players on here, including Don Dixon's wife, Marty Jones, sang some backup. And, of course, Don Dixon's on the album. And Tom Teeley, who was with Marshall in Beatlemania, sings backing vocals on that album as well. Really nice collection of songs. Definitely better than Downtown. Gosh, it sounds like I'm knocking Downtown. I'm not, because Blues is King is on it. But this is definitely a step up above that album, and definitely worth your time. Now, Marshall had been having problems with the label, and he was just tired of putting out these albums and maybe them not getting the right promotion or maybe not getting enough money. I don't know what the problem was, but there were issues with the label. And for his final album for Warner Brothers, the album's called Good Evening. He essentially just made it a covers album. Not a American Songbook type thing, or not covering like all these popular famous songs, but most of the songs were written by other artists. In fact, there's even a song written by Diane Warren on this album, if you can believe that. But it's not a bad song, though. In fact, it continues sort of the sound of Mary Jean. It's more full and exciting, but still, Marshall did co-write some of the songs on the album, but generally speaking, like I said, I think he calls it a covers album. But there's a lot of great people on this album. David Lindley plays on this album. Robert Crenshaw doesn't play drums on it, I don't believe, but he does sing backup. And this is definitely an album that I think a lot of Marshall Crenshaw fans, if they weren't listening to him by then, if they had sort of given up on Marshall Crenshaw, why would anybody ever want to do that? Go give this another listen, because there's a lot of great songs. It's solid. Marshall Crenshaw's never put out a bad album. There's some that are stronger than others, but he's never put out a bad album. And he does, and that voice, and just Everything about Marshall Crenshaw was absolutely wonderful. Now, this period of his music has been covered on a couple different compilations. There's a 2 CD compilation out there, I think, that Rhino put out. Now, this is the first thing they put out. It's called This Is Easy, and it's a single disc. This would be a great gateway if you can track this down if you've never heard him. And this has a lot of the songs that I've mentioned and more. And I believe it does go a little bit beyond the Warner Brothers years, but it's got a whole bunch of great songs. Like his first single, Something's Gonna Happen, that was his pre-Warner Brothers single, and it's great and just filled chock full of great guitar pop. Like I said, Marshall Crenshaw, great songwriter, great guitar player, great voice, and he understands music and everything about it, and it's really wonderful to listen to these albums. He's put out a lot of great albums since then. Robert Crenshaw, his brother, has put out a lot of great albums since then. They are definitely worth checking out. But you know what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play a medley that I put together, and it features 3 songs from each of these albums, except the compilations. So you get an idea if you've never heard Marshall Crenshaw, or if you want to remember what Marshall Crenshaw sounds like. This is the perfect time to sit back, relax, turn it up, and I will see you on the other side.
Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. Someday, some way. Oh, someday, some way. Yeah, yeah. Someday, some way. Maybe I'll understand you. Someday, some way. Oh, well, I hate TV. There's gotta be somebody other than me who's ready to run it off immediately. I'm looking for a cynical girl. Life goes on.
That's it. I really appreciate you watching this video as I discuss Marshall Crenshaw, the Warner Brothers years, the 80s years, the early years, whatever you want to call it. Thank you very much. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.